The clinking of a glass coffee cup against a sleek marble tabletop echoed softly in the high-rise office of Zayn Malik, a self-made entrepreneur whose fingerprints were on nearly every aspect of the tech startup he'd built from scratch. With floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Karachi's skyline, the office felt less like a workspace and more like the throne room of someone who had carved an empire out of uncertainty. Dressed sharply in a tailored charcoal suit, his neatly groomed beard and intense eyes made him look like someone who didn't merely run a company, he commanded it. At 36, Zayn was already a name whispered with admiration and envy in equal measure in the city's entrepreneurial circles. He wasn't born into wealth. In fact, his childhood in a cramped apartment with peeling walls and flickering lights was what fueled his drive. His mother worked double shifts as a nurse, while his father struggled to find consistency in contract-based labor. Zayn learned early what hunger meant, literal and metaphorical. And when he finally got a scholarship to study software engineering, he promised himself he'd never go back to that life. He was calculated, cautious, and fiercely loyal, often to his own detriment. And perhaps that was his only real flaw. Loyalty. Enter Asfandyar. Smooth-talking, charismatic, and brilliant with numbers, Asfand had joined Zayn's company 4 years ago when Zayn's tech app, LocalLink, a logistics and transport tracking tool, was gaining traction but lacked financial discipline. Asfand was the answer to that chaos. With his MBA and contacts, he helped secure funding, negotiated key deals, and streamlined operations. Together, they were unstoppable. To outsiders, their partnership was one of balance. Zayn the visionary, Asfand the executor. But not everyone in Zayn's circle trusted Asfand. Farah, Zayn's younger sister and legal advisor, had often raised quiet concerns. "He's smart, yes," she'd once said, sliding a document across his desk, "but too polished. People like him know how to hide things in plain sight." Zayn had smiled, brushing her off. "You're being paranoid. He's not just my partner, he's like a brother." Farah hadn't pushed further, but she'd started quietly monitoring the company's legal bindings on her own time. Zayn never knew how close her suspicions would eventually come to the truth. Zayn's days were packed from sunrise to past midnight. Mornings began with strategy meetings, investor updates, and product reviews. Evenings brought PR events, networking dinners, and quick calls with his development team in Islamabad. His calendar was a fortress, booked weeks in advance, color-coded and micromanaged. Yet, within this precision, he carried a quiet sense of purpose. Beyond profits and valuations, Zayn genuinely cared about the company's mission. LocalLink had helped small businesses and riders across Pakistan manage logistics better, saving money and time. He had personally designed their rider bonus system, ensuring delivery boys had insurance and emergency funds, something unheard of in the local gig economy. He was also a mentor to interns and young founders, often inviting them to shadow him. "Build something that serves others," he'd tell them, "and protect it like it's your own blood." But all the while, something small had begun to shift in the background. It began with a strange email. A client Zayn had never heard of sent him a thank you message about a service package worth over 3 million rupees. But according to his memory, no such deal had ever passed through him. When he forwarded the email to Asfand, the reply came within minutes. "Just a side deal I handled, long-term client, minor stuff. All clean. We'll update you soon. Chill, bye, smiley face." It felt harmless enough. Zayn let it go. A week later, another strange instance. A vendor called to confirm payment clearance on a third-party marketing campaign. Zayn blinked. "What campaign?" The vendor apologized, claiming it had been approved by Asfand personally. "He said you were too busy to be looped in. It was urgent." Zayn had nodded, his stomach twisting slightly. But again, he trusted Asfand. Still, these weren't isolated incidents anymore. The quiet buzz of something being off began to hum louder. A budget spreadsheet was locked, marked admin eyes only. A junior accountant resigned abruptly with no explanation. One of their tech developers was seen arguing with Asfand late one night, though no one knew what about. Zayn heard whispers but dismissed them. He was building toward the company's biggest funding round yet, a Series C with foreign investors. Now wasn't the time for drama or suspicion. But Farah noticed. You ever wonder why he's always the one responding to financial inquiries directly? Or why he's been pushing for new account access rights? She asked one evening, sitting across from Zion with a quiet concern in her eyes. He's just being efficient, Zion replied, though he sounded less sure this time. He's being something, she muttered. One morning, Zion entered his office to find an envelope resting on his chair. No label, no return address. Inside was a single printed sheet. Bank transfer confirmation account, Asfandyar amount, 1,700,000 rupees. Memo. Phase 2, diverted revenue. Zion sat down slowly, the paper trembling in his hand. The room felt colder. The skyline looked distant, like a mirage. A storm was coming. He could feel it now. And for the first time in years, Zion felt like a stranger inside his own empire. But what no one knew, not Farah, not even Asfand, was that Zion, the boy who grew up with nothing, never forgot how fragile success could be. And deep in an encrypted drive on a separate server, Zion had kept something hidden, something powerful. But that part of the story hadn't begun yet. Zion sat motionless, the bank confirmation slipped still in his hand, his mind racing. 1,000 thoughts collided in his head, but one rose above the rest like a siren. He betrayed me. The office, once his sanctuary, now felt tainted. The hum of the AC sounded distant. His fingers gripped the edge of his desk, knuckles white. He picked up his phone, considered calling Asfand, but paused. Instinct, the same instinct that had guided him through every major decision in his career, told him not to confront just yet. Instead, he called Farah. Within 15 minutes, she was in his office, still in her oversized lawyer's coat, her expression unreadable. You were right, Zion said quietly, sliding the document across the table. Farah picked it up, eyes scanning. Her lips tightened. He used the company's funds. This isn't just unethical, it's criminal. If we can prove intent, this is theft. Zion leaned back, rubbing his temple. And this is probably just the tip of the iceberg. Farah nodded. We'll need access to all transaction logs, employee correspondences, vendor records, everything. But we do it quietly. If Asfand senses we're onto him, he'll vanish. That night, Zion didn't go home. He stayed in the office, lights dim, scrolling through every financial report from the past year. The deeper he went, the more inconsistencies he found. Ghost vendors, duplicate invoices, memos labeled executive expenses with no clear explanation. Even contracts signed without his approval, contracts that diverted intellectual property rights to shell companies. It became clear. Asfand had been laying the groundwork for this betrayal for months, maybe years. The next morning, Farah brought in Aram, a trusted forensic accountant. Zion had mentored Aram years ago, and he was known for his discreet, methodical style. By midweek, Aram's preliminary findings were devastating. Asfand created 3 shell companies, Aram said, placing a folder on the table. He used them to siphon off profits, route client payments, and even claim inflated marketing costs. He's been redirecting funds into offshore accounts. Zion's jaw clenched. How much? Conservatively, over 42 million rupees. Maybe more. Silence settled over the room like a heavy curtain. Zion could hardly process the number. He's not just stealing, Farah added grimly. He's preparing to walk away with your company. The contracts he's been signing shift more control over to his dummy firms. If you hadn't found this when you did, within months, he could have legally edged you out. A storm brewed in Zion's chest, rage, heartbreak, humiliation. He had trusted Asfand like a brother, dined with him, traveled with him, even considered making him godfather to his unborn child. And all along, Asfand had been tightening the noose. But then Zion remembered something. The backup plan. Months ago, during a strategic meeting with a foreign investor, the discussion had veered toward hostile takeovers and internal sabotage. The investor, an old European executive, had said something that stuck with Zion. Always build your empire, with invisible strings. Leave a trail only you can trace back. Zion had taken that advice to heart. Quietly, almost obsessively, he had started duplicating all important records on an encrypted cloud storage system hidden behind a dummy research project named Deep River. Even his fans didn't know it existed. Every contract Zion had signed, every deal he'd approved, every product blueprint, it was all backed up. Not only that, Zion had also created a digital kill switch, a proprietary line of code embedded in the core algorithm of Localink's infrastructure, visible only to the original architect, him. If ever things got out of hand, he could disable key systems, leaving all unauthorized clones or spin-offs useless. Now he realized it was time to activate that plan. Over the next 48 hours, a silent operation began within the heart of the company. Zion, Farah, and Aram worked in secrecy. They duplicated Isfan's fraudulent documents, traced every transaction, and gathered communication records from employees who had unknowingly helped Isfan cover his tracks. Zion even reconnected with Naveed, a former employee from the original Localink dev team. Quiet and brilliant, Naveed had left due to philosophical disagreements with Isfan. Now he was eager to help. Naveed confirmed that Isfan had commissioned a separate version of the Localink platform under a fake company name, Fastnode Logistics. The interface was nearly identical, but the branding was tweaked just enough to look different. Isfan planned to relaunch it, pretending it was a new startup, funded by his stolen millions. The betrayal was complete. Zion stood before a whiteboard, markers in hand, planning the next moves like a general at war. "We expose him, but we don't go public just yet," he said. "We let him think he's winning." Farah tilted her head. "What are you thinking?" "We prepare a controlled collapse. Let him walk into the trap thinking he's won, and then pull the rug." And so, the act began. Zion played it cool, smiled at meetings, shared celebratory cigars with Isfan after they secured the Series C funding. Even let Isfan pitch the company to a new investor from Singapore, someone Zion had secretly briefed about the situation beforehand. Isfan, drunk on his own cunning, didn't suspect a thing. He was already prepping his resignation, likely planning to sell the fake startup abroad, vanish into luxury, and leave Zion to deal with the financial wreckage. But Zion was ready. He had the documents, the paper trail, the cloud backups, the original IP filings, and most of all, he had something Isfan couldn't steal: the soul of the company. The city skyline was draped in gold as the sun dipped behind the horizon, but Zion's eyes weren't on the view from his penthouse office. His focus was on the glowing screen in front of him, lines of encrypted code scrolling as Naveed finalized the dead switch for Localink's cloned infrastructure. This was it. The trap was nearly ready. Days had turned into weeks since the investigation began. Every step was measured, every move silent. Zion knew if he acted too soon, Isfan could slip away, and justice would dissolve like smoke. But now, everything was aligned. Farah had built a solid legal case, filled with evidence that could destroy Isfan in court. Fake invoices, contract discrepancies, offshore account logs, and even damning internal memos Isfan thought he had deleted. Aram had compiled the financial timeline of the fraud, and it was a masterpiece of forensic precision. And Naveed's tech sabotage? Impeccable. Zion was now not only prepared to expose Isfan, he was going to obliterate his backup plan. "Tomorrow," he whispered, "we end this." The next morning, Zion invited Isfan to an exclusive investor meeting in Localink's executive boardroom. The stage was set with perfection. The Singapore investor, Mr. Chin, an actor hired through Farah's network, sat poised, ready to play his part. Isfan entered wearing his usual smirk, his designer cufflinks flashing under the light. "Zion, I have to say, this is a great opportunity," Isfan said, feigning loyalty. "Mr. Chin seems eager. We might just hit unicorn status by next quarter." Zion nodded slowly. "Let's hope so." The meeting began with a showcase of Localink's growth metrics, investor forecasts, and technology pipeline. Isfan took the lead on presenting, walking around the room like a proud father boasting about his child, completely unaware he was narrating his own downfall. Midway through the presentation, Mr. Chen interrupted. This Fastnode Logistics you mentioned, is that a new division of Local Inc? Asfand blinked. Yes, sort of. It's a strategic partner. We're aligning with them for expansion. Zion stood. Actually, he said calmly, Fastnode isn't a partner. It's a fraud. The room fell silent. Zion walked to the table and placed a thick binder in front of Mr. Chen. Inside are documents proving that Fastnode is a cloned replica of Local Inc. Built using our stolen code, financed through embezzled company funds, and operated under 3 fake firms created by Mr. Asfand Shah. Asfand's face dropped. What the hell are you talking about? Farah entered the room at that precise moment, followed by 2 legal officers and Aram. A projection flickered to life on the boardroom screen, screenshots, emails, and transaction records illuminating Asfand's web of deceit. Here's the $5.2 million transfer to Valbridge Holdings, Aram said, clicking through slides. A company that doesn't exist outside of a P.O. box. From there, funds were routed to Fastnode's development accounts. Farah took over. The intellectual property filings under Fastnode were drafted using original Local Inc templates. The UI is identical, down to line spacing. You also used our internal project codes in the beta software releases. Asfand looked stunned, his lips moving, but no words coming out. I've already revoked all your access, Zion continued. Your credentials have been blacklisted. The source code you stole? Inert. Naveed embedded a logic bomb weeks ago. Fastnode no longer functions. You can't do this, Asfand finally gasped. You have no proof Farah smiled coldly. We have everything, including voice recordings, employee testimonies, and surveillance logs. Your assistant came forward. You treated her like garbage. She turned over your burner phones. Then came the final blow. Zion walked over to Asfand, standing inches from him. You betrayed me. You sat at my table, drank from my cup, and plotted behind my back. But the thing you never understood, this company was never built on money or tricks. It was built on vision, on people who believed. And you tried to tear that apart for greed. Security entered. Asfand's face had turned ghostly pale. I trusted you like family, Zion said, voice cracking just slightly. And you used that trust to bleed me dry. But you forgot one thing. Asfand, I built this empire from nothing. And I will protect it with everything I have. As the guards escorted Asfand out, he didn't resist. His cocky mask had melted into silent shame. But Zion wasn't done. Later that afternoon, he held a company-wide town hall meeting. The employees, buzzing with rumors, sat in anticipation. Zion stood before them, raw and real. I owe you the truth, he began. One of our own betrayed us. But thanks to this team and people who believe in integrity, we caught it in time. Local Inc was tested, and we prevailed. The room burst into applause. Some employees teared up. Others hugged. For weeks, the mood had been uncertain. Now it was charged with unity and pride. Zion smiled, but it was a smile born from scars. Behind closed doors, Farah handed him a final document. The case is strong. We'll freeze his assets by tomorrow. He won't be able to touch a dime. Zion nodded. Let the law do its job. I'm done playing chess with snakes. That night, he stood alone at the edge of his office balcony, looking over the city that had once seemed too big to conquer. In his hand, he held a letter Asfand had left behind, scribbled apologies, excuses, regrets. Zion didn't read it twice. He folded the paper and tossed it into the fire pit. Some betrayals didn't deserve closure. The news of Asfand's arrest made headlines within hours. Co-founder of tech unicorn LOC Alliance charged with corporate espionage and fraud, one banner screamed. His photos, once seen on magazine covers celebrating innovation, now spread like wildfire through the media, but for all the wrong reasons. Zion stood in the green room of a primetime interview studio, minutes before going live. He wasn't just there to salvage public image. He was there to draw a line between who he was and who he would never be again. A producer gave him a thumbs up. 2 minutes. Zion took a deep breath. Everything had changed. Before stepping into the spotlight, he reflected on what had truly been at stake. It wasn't the company, the millions, or the pride of proving someone wrong.
It was about restoring the
Dignity they tried to strip from him. The young, black man who had dared to lead in a world where people like him were often only allowed to assist. When the cameras turned on, Zion greeted the host with a calm nod. Zayn Malik, first of all, thank you for joining us. You've had quite a month. He gave a slight smile. That's putting it lightly. You've been called a visionary, but also recently a victim of betrayal. How are you feeling now that the dust is settling? Zion paused, then replied, It's easy to celebrate the wins. But true growth comes when you learn from the wounds. I feel focused,
alive,
and more committed than ever.
The host nodded, impressed.
There's something symbolic about this. Many people are calling you a role model for resilience.
Any thoughts on that?
I didn't choose to be betrayed, Zion said. But I chose how to respond. And I chose to fight back without becoming like the person who tried to destroy me. Across the country, young entrepreneurs, especially from marginalized backgrounds, watched that interview with a fire in their chests. Zion wasn't just a survivor. He was now a symbol. But his redemption wasn't just public. It was personal. 2 days later, he visited his old neighborhood. It had been years since he'd walked those streets. Kids played with worn-out soccer balls. Women sat on stoops sharing gossip. The same corner store still sold lukewarm sodas. Everything had changed, and yet nothing had. Zion stopped in front of a small, crumbling community center. This was where he'd taken his first coding class at 15, taught by a volunteer who saw in him what no one else did. The center was on the brink of closure, lacking funds, staff, and support. He made a decision without hesitation. That night, at a private event, Zion announced the Local Lift Foundation, a new initiative that would invest $10 million into underserved communities, providing resources for youth interested in tech and entrepreneurship. If I could rise from there, he said, pointing to an old photo of his childhood home, then so can a million others. But they need someone to believe in them, to give them a bridge. This foundation will be that bridge. The room erupted in applause. But the most touching moment came when an elderly woman approached him afterward, eyes moist with emotion. You probably don't remember me, she said, but I used to give you extra computer time at the library when you were a kid. You always looked like you had somewhere big to go. Zion's voice caught in his throat. He gently squeezed her hand. I remember. And you were right. Meanwhile, Localink's board offered him a lifetime executive chair position. He declined. I don't want a title, he said. I want impact. He promoted Aram to CFO, made Farah a permanent legal partner with equity, and even invited Naveed to co-lead a new ethical tech division. This company must reflect what we believe, not just what we build, he told the leadership team. As for Sfand, the trial began 3 weeks later. Farah stood firm in court, delivering blow after blow with her evidence. The jury deliberated only 2 hours before returning a unanimous verdict: guilty. Asfand was sentenced to 9 years in federal prison with asset forfeiture. His reputation, once sparkling with charm and press quotes, was now reduced to a footnote in Zion's rise. Zion didn't attend the sentencing. He was too busy visiting a school in East Karachi, where he handed out laptops and scholarships in his mother's name. The same night, he wrote a letter, not to Asfand, but to himself. A ritual of release. You rose not because they let you. You rose because they couldn't stop you. You trusted, you fell, but you rose again. Never forget who you are. And never let betrayal close your heart. He sealed it and placed it in a small wooden box labeled Legacy. Weeks passed. Then months. Localink recovered and expanded, earning new trust, new deals, and a loyal global following. But for Zion, the real success wasn't in the metrics. It was in the boy who saw him on a billboard and whispered to his mother, "One day, that'll be me." It was in the teenage girl who sent him a message, "Thank you for proving we belong in rooms they once locked us out of." It was in every moment he chose healing over hatred, action over anger, and light over vengeance. This was redemption. And it was glorious. 6 months had passed since the trial. The world had moved on from the scandal, but Zayn Malik had not. He didn't want to forget, he wanted to build from it. Every morning, as sunlight streamed through the windows of his minimalist loft, he was reminded of something simple yet profound. The storm hadn't broken him. It had revealed him. His mornings started early now. No more frantic meetings or late-night calls filled with tension. Instead, he practiced breathwork, journaling, calling his mother just to hear her laugh. Peace, once a luxury, had become his new form of wealth. Local Inc. had entered a new chapter too, its mission no longer just about innovation, but about inclusion. The app now featured a special tool called StreetLift, designed to prioritize small businesses in underserved areas, helping them connect with local customers, suppliers, and partners. It wasn't just tech. It was empowerment in code. This initiative had already helped over 5,000 vendors, many of whom had never seen their work spotlighted before. And the man leading it? Zayn, who now preferred to be called just Z in the office, sat at the back of strategy meetings rather than the head. He listened more, delegated with trust. He didn't just rebuild a company. He redefined leadership. At a major tech summit in Dubai, he was invited as keynote speaker. The ballroom glowed with chandeliers and anticipation. Instead of delivering a presentation filled with stats, he walked on stage with no slides, just a quiet confidence. When I first entered this world, he began, I thought success was being the smartest person in the room. Then I learned it's being the most human one. The audience fell into a deep silence. I was betrayed by someone I called my brother. I was doubted by the very industry I'd poured my life into. And I lost nearly everything. But that's when I realized, what's meant for you doesn't need to be forced. It finds you when you stand in truth. Applause erupted, but Z didn't pause for it. He simply nodded and continued. This new era isn't about revenge. It's about rebirth. It's about lifting others as you rise. The speech went viral within hours. Not because of flashy delivery, but because of its rawness. The words resonated not just with tech professionals, but with every person who had ever been overlooked, underestimated, or used. Back in the US, Zayn had one final meeting scheduled before taking a long-awaited break. He returned to the same courthouse where months earlier he had once been judged. This time it was different. He sat across from a panel of policymakers and educational reformers. His pitch? Integrating tech literacy and emotional resilience training into inner-city high school curricula. Kids are growing up in digital chaos, he said. They need more than math. They need tools to cope with betrayal, pressure, and identity crises. Let's give them a map before they're forced to navigate a storm. The proposal passed unanimously. Later that night, Farah, Aram, and Naveed gathered at Z's place to celebrate quietly. No paparazzi. No announcements. Just friends, laughter, and nostalgia. Over mint tea and samosas, they reflected on how far they had come. You know, Farah said, raising a toast, I used to think justice was a courtroom victory. But watching you reclaim your story, that was justice. They clinked glasses. No one spoke for a moment. Words were unnecessary. The silence was sacred. A week later, Z packed a small bag and left for Morocco, a solo trip to reconnect with a part of himself that had been buried beneath ambition. There, in a small village near Chefchaouen, he taught a coding class to girls who had never touched a computer. One of them tugged at his sleeve and asked, Are you famous? He smiled gently. Not really, but I believe in you. In the stillness of that night, under a velvet sky full of stars, he walked through narrow blue-painted streets and whispered a quiet promise to himself. Never again will I shrink to fit someone else's fear. When he returned home weeks later, he found a letter waiting on his doorstep. It was from a fan. The handwriting was still sharp, still familiar.
Zayn.
I don't expect forgiveness. But I want you to know that prison gave me time. Time to reflect, regret, and unravel myself. You were always the better man. I was too blind to see it.
I'm sorry.
Asfand. Z stared at the paper. then folded it neatly and placed it in the same legacy box where he had placed his letter months ago. Not out of bitterness, but out of closure. He didn't need revenge. He had peace. On his way to the office the next day, he passed by a mural in the city, an unexpected surprise. It showed a silhouette of a black man rising from broken chains, his chest glowing with light. The words beneath it read, "Rise rooted, rise radiant, rise real." Zion paused, heart full, eyes damp. Yes, the world had changed. But so had he. And this new era, built not on ego but on evolution, was just beginning. Let this story linger in your heart for a moment, not just as a tale of betrayal and triumph, but as a reflection of something far greater. You see, karma doesn't wear a clock. It doesn't rush. It waits patiently, orbiting in silence, watching every seed you plant, every word you speak, every intention you hold. Zayn Malik's journey wasn't just about being wronged and rising, it was a sacred unfolding. A cosmic blueprint, reminding you that every fall is designed to show you the floor of your soul, and every rise is a divine invitation to climb as your highest self. Think back to the beginning. A brilliant man, fueled by vision and purpose, stabbed in the back by the one he trusted most. His empire shattered, his name smeared, and yet not a single ounce of hate took root in his heart. He had every reason to seek vengeance, to burn bridges, to let his anger poison the ground he once nurtured. But he didn't.
Why?
Because somewhere deep inside him, Zion understood a truth many forget. You don't have to fight karma. You only have to make space for it. The universe already saw what his fan did. The lies, the manipulation, the greed. It witnessed every whisper in boardrooms, every falsified document, every smug smirk behind Zion's back. And in time, it responded. Not immediately, but divinely. And that's the beauty of karma. It doesn't need spectacle. It moves quietly, precisely, powerfully. Asfand, once the media darling, now sat in silence behind cold metal bars, left with only his thoughts and a long trail of regrets. No amount of brilliance could save him, because brilliance without integrity is just a shadow wearing a crown. But karma wasn't just about his fans' fall. It was about Zion's becoming. Because karma doesn't only punish, it also rewards. Every time Zion chose dignity over drama, grace over grudges, truth over ego, he was watering the roots of his own redemption. The world saw only his downfall, but the universe saw his discipline, his restraint, his heart. And so it answered, not with revenge, but with revelation. A new company, a global stage, a community that believed in his voice, an identity that no longer needed defending. He didn't just rebuild his empire, he became a lighthouse for others navigating their own storms. And isn't that the point? You are not here to convince people of your worth. You are here to remember it, live it, and let it echo in everything you touch. You might be in your own Zion chapter right now. Maybe someone betrayed you. Maybe the people you trusted most turned their backs. Maybe you're standing in the ashes of something you once believed would last forever. If that's you, pause. Not to wallow, but to listen. Because somewhere in the silence, karma is writing your next chapter. And if you're brave enough to walk through this pain without becoming it, you'll discover a strength that cannot be stolen. Remember, karma doesn't just balance the scales. It reveals who you truly are. When the world forgets you, karma remembers. When the lies outnumber the truth, karma corrects. When you're pushed into the shadows, karma shines a light. But it takes time. And your only job is to stay in alignment. Keep your hands clean. Keep your soul open. Don't trade your character for a quick victory. Because what's coming is bigger than your enemies. It's tailored to your evolution. Zion could have turned cold, closed his heart, let his bitterness lead. But instead, he opened himself wider. Let the betrayal shape his legacy, not stain it. That is real power. And it's in you too. Right now, there may be names that bring a sting to your chest. Faces that replay in your mind at night. Decisions you wish you could undo. But one day, Those same wounds will become windows, through which light will pour into your future. And when that day comes, you won't feel anger. You won't even feel triumph. You'll feel peace. Because karma will have done what karma always does, bring things back into divine order.
So breathe.
Let go of the weight that was never yours to carry. Trust the slow magic of the universe. It's already moving pieces in your favor. One day, you'll walk into a room that was once filled with judgment, and you'll be the one holding the light. One day, you'll meet the version of yourself you thought was destroyed, and realize she was only being reborn. One day, they'll whisper about how you came back stronger, and you'll smile, not because they finally see you, but because you never stopped seeing yourself. This is your reminder. You are not what they did to you. You are not the mistake they tried to make you believe you were. You are not broken. You are becoming. Let karma do what karma does. You rise.